These are junk fees. They're unfair, and they hit marginalized Americans the hardest, especially low-income folks and people of color. They benefit big corporations, not consumers, not working families. I know it's been a tough few years, but from day one, my administration has been laser focused on easing the burden facing working-class families.
That was President Biden announcing action to eliminate what he's calling junk fees, saying that surprise charges such as hotel resort fees or unfair banking penalties are hurting working-class families. Biden also claiming that more expensive and roomier airline seats are also, quote, unfair and junk, and they're unfair to people of color. Joining us right now is Georgia Congressman and member of the House Financial Services Committee, Barry Loudermilk. Congressman, it's good to see you. You're on the Financial Services Committee. You've obviously looked at this. What's your reaction to Joe Biden's comments?
Well, good morning, Maria. This is absurdity. I mean, does he even know what he's talking about when he's talking about 6 inches on an airline seat? I mean, most Americans probably don't have a clue what he's talking about, but this is something they've been working on for quite a while. The director of the CFPB, I challenged him in a committee hearing about junk fees. They're creating this thing, junk fees, like it's something in law, and it isn't. And they're going after fees that are legal, such as bank overdraft fees. They want to eliminate those. And this is something, it's an overreach, it's overstretch. This is just showing their desperation that they have right now in this election. It's to do anything to make the people think they actually care about them. So
you think he's just doing this to make people think like he's doing something about inflation after all of the massive $5 trillion plus in spending that actually took us to 40-year highs of inflation?
Absolutely. I mean, the first way that for recovery is to admit you have a problem. They will not admit that they are the reason that we're seeing this record inflation. And so when you won't fix the actual problem, you got to come up with something else. And they're making these things up. They're going after things that would make no difference. And quite frankly, most people don't care about it all.
Congressman, it's Dagan McDowell. But the bigger picture is the greatest hardship on working Americans and particularly lower income Americans has come straight out of the Democrats with this, Maria's $5 trillion in new spending and borrowing. And do the American people know that these junk fees are just, well, junk theater ahead of the election?
I think they do, because one thing, they're not defining junk fees other than this obscure 6 additional inches on airlines. I mean, I listened to the quote several times. I still didn't know what he's talking about. I don't think he knows what he's talking about.
Well, I would argue that if anybody actually listened to the commander in chaos talking about the extra fees for more leg room, they think, well, golly, I really wish I had enough money to take a trip with my entire family and fly somewhere. I'm running up my credit card bills just to pay for gasoline and food.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm paying 30% more just for a dozen eggs right now.
Exactly. I mean, the price of groceries is one thing a lot of people aren't talking about, and that's what I'm hearing about from people throughout the community, especially here in Georgia. People are just frustrated. He says he feels their frustration. Well, he really doesn't. They're not frustrated at 6 inches of airline leg space. They're frustrated with how much they're paying. They're frustrated with the government trying to dictate every aspect of their life. They're frustrated with woke culture. They're frustrated with cancel culture. This is what they're frustrated.
Let's not forget, he also threw into the mix concert fees. I mean, let's think about this. To Dagan and Maria and Mark's point, your point, people literally are starving right now because the cost of goods that you literally need to survive has gone through the roof.
So out of touch.
They have such no plan to deal with this. They're so desperate to try to tell the American people that they have some plan to deal with something that they're going for this most ridiculous. I don't even want to call it low-hanging fruit. This is silliness, Congressman.
It absolutely is. It's absurd. And the next thing is they will blame the American people for inflation. Just watch. It will come. It can never be there to be the American people.
Well, let me ask you about the catalyst that is upon us. Will the midterms be a catalyst for all of this? We've got 12 days until the election. Georgia has seen a record amount of early voting. 1 million ballots already cast. The White House is still claiming that there's voter suppression in the Peach State. Watch this.
The White House observing instances of voter suppression in Georgia and other states that adopted some of these laws over the last 2 years?
I'm not going to get into specifics of what Georgia voters are doing. What I am saying is that, generally speaking, again, more broadly speaking, of course, high turnout and voter suppression can take place at the same time.
We don't know what she's talking about either, Congressman, but this from the group that actually doesn't want anybody to have an ID when they go to the voting booth.
Yeah, I think the word of the day is absurdity. This is another one. You know, when you look at the record turnout that we're having, what they're saying is they don't like who's turning out, because traditionally Democrats tend to vote earlier more than Republicans do in Georgia. And right now, it looks like Republicans are coming out stronger than Democrats. And that's what they don't like. But when you also look at the numbers, blacks and elderly are coming out more than they did in 2018. So they can't claim voter suppression because minorities are coming out in droves as well. But keep this in mind. Those traditional groups that vote Democrat, they're frustrated about the same things that Republicans are. So we'll see how that turns out in a couple of weeks.
Isn't it interesting, Mark? 2020 was like one of the historic races in terms of people coming out to vote.
Yeah.
Right? And like the black community, the Hispanic community came out in droves, and they say that there's voter suppression. How do you connect those dots?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
A record number of people came out.
Well, that's what they try to do. They try to connect dots that aren't meant to be connected.
Right.
So it's absolutely insane. Look, obviously people are coming out to vote. There were people who may not have actually been alive who were voting. So I think there were quite a few votes in the last election. And it remains to be seen what happens in a few weeks here.
Congressman, it's good to see you.